Welcome to number 11. We've learnt the basics. We're now going to start doing practical things. What kind of things? Switches and things. But first, please subscribe to the channel, click on the like button, click the bell icon to get notified, and support me on Patreon if you can. There's a link in the description below. So when we say the Internet of Things, what do we mean by things? What do people mean? Well, pretty much anything that's got the word smart in front of it. Smart fridge, smart microwave, anything you can put a network device into and control from some other part of the network, even if it's the other side of the world. Now, most people use it for lights and garage doors and security and stuff like that. But the point is, it can be anything. Anything you can connect to the net. And continuing that theme, that's the way that H4 Plugins looks at things. So a thing in H4 Plugins language is a black box. It doesn't matter what it does. It can do anything you want it to do, and we'll look at how to do that in a minute. But it does three main things. It has an internal memory which it calls the state, and it will accept a command of on, which sets the state to 1 and starts something happening. It will accept a command of off, set the state to 0 and stop whatever that thing is happening. It will also accept the command toggle, which will invert the state, change it from what it used to be. So if it was 1, it will go to 0. If it's 0, it will go to 1, and then do whether it's starting or stopping again. So a thing is a kind of shell or a framework around something that you want to happen that obeys a standard set of commands and can be interfaced with in a standard fashion by all the other components of H4 plugins. Now the beauty of that is this, is that getting that command to the thing can be done by a variety of ways. We can have a keyboard. If you're sitting next to it and you've got it connected to the serial monitor still, you type the commands in by hand. You can press a button and make it do the thing that it does. It's literally physically switch it on and off. You can do the same kind of thing from the web user interface that's built into it. That big red switch at the bottom of the web user interface is the thing that switches the thing on and off, and the LED above it is the thing that shows you whether it's on or off. You can do whatever you want to do from your own code. You can decide to switch it on whenever just by calling the thing on command kind of thing. But where it starts to get fun and where it becomes the Internet of Things is that any of those other mechanisms can be used to turn on the thing. So anything that speaks MQTT can publish a topic of your device on or off or toggle. Anything that speaks HTTP, so a browser or any other device that can issue an HTTP request, so you can be controlled by anything, like another H4 for example. We'll look in another video about how we have a master and slave relationship. Or SSDP. Now that might not be familiar to too many people, but that's how Alexa voice control works under the hood. So for free, if you define a thing, you can control it any one of those 7 ways automatically. So one line of code, all of that comes with it for free. So let's look slightly deeper under the hood, so to speak. What is a thing? Well, there you go. If you're a programmer, there's your thing. It's a function that you write that takes an on-off parameter. That's it. So you can do anything you want in the middle of that thing. Anything at all. Now there's a special version of it, pre-programmed to the most common thing that you might want to do in that function. H4 plugins calls that a switch. And what it does is it passes that on-off state to a GPIO pin. And that's it. So if you've got something like a simple relay or a lamp of any kind or anything that goes on when you put a 5 volts on it, 3.3 volts on it, you can just define it as a switch. And that's a thing with a built-in function to drive a GPIO. It doesn't actually do it that way in code, but there's the concept. So, for example, I use the switch mostly for all the son-off devices for the lamps in my house. But you can use it also on an ESP01. Anything that basically just goes on off, you can use an H4 plugin switch, including something like this. Doesn't matter what the thing does, it will respond to the commands in the same way. So be very careful with that bottom one by saying on. There's a couple of variations which are very, very useful. They're called the conditional thing and a conditional switch. Now they have analogues in a number of different fields. If you're used to electronics, it's like a tri-state buffer. Unless you assert the enable line, the thing just sits there pretending to be dead and does nothing. Like a dead man's handle on a train. If you don't have pressure on that switch all the time, the train won't run. You want to fire a missile, you've got to flip that red thing up first. In a machine shop, you've got a safety foot pedal. If your foot's not on that, your lathe won't run. Most PIR sensors have got a built-in light sensor, so they only operate at night. And of course, pretty much all street lights have got the same thing. So if you have a conditional thing, you need a separate function that returns a true or false value, telling you whether the condition is satisfied or not satisfied, and therefore the thing can or should be allowed to operate. All things and switches have an auto off parameter, and it shouldn't be any surprise what that does. Set it for 5,000, say, then however that thing gets switched on, 5 seconds later it will switch itself off. So let's have a look at a real thing. Let's look at my thing. This is what I call a squawk box. It's like a wall alarm for my house security system. It sits inside a barn about 30 yards from my house, so it needs to be big and visible, which is what that LED is for. It flashes. And this is it's only a piezo sounder, but it's a 12 volt one off of, I think it's meant to be for like a vehicle or a motorcycle alarm, which is why it needs 12 volts. And let me tell you, I will not be testing it on this video because it is ear splitting. Even from 30 yards away, I can hear it quite clearly. This red LED tells you when the alarm is ready to sound. And I say that because it's not on all the time, because this light sensor here is arms the system. So this will not go on unless it's dark. That's what that sensor does. So let's the whole thing lives in a cheap plastic junction box, but it's kind of protected from the elements, so that's not an issue. As with all of my devices, it's built down to a budget. So we'll just pop the top off so that you can see what's inside. Nothing there, that's just the power supply. A little tiny 12 volt converter drops it, and then we've got a little 5 volt converter. So obviously the 12 volt is for the siren and the big flasher, and the 5 volts for the ESP inside. So let's get rid of that and look at the real guts. Oops. I may need to just get this camera to focus again. Just bear with me a second. How's that? Is that a bit better? Yeah. Okay. Nothing too exciting or special here. This is the connector that goes down to the power supply. Inside we've got 12 volts on the yellow, 5 volts on the red, and obviously ground. The ESP8266 circuit itself really is very simple. It's got the light sensor coming into one of the GPIOs. It's got the LED coming out of another one of the GPIOs, and then finally the bit that's connected to the thing pin is a MOSFET that will drive sufficient voltage and current to make that sounder sound, and that bit works quite well. I'm telling you, this thing makes a lot of noise. There's not a lot else I can say about the internals there, but this is run by the conditional switch, and the condition is that it must have a second internal state called armed. Now, armed can be set one of two ways. Armed gets set when that light sensor goes dark. So as soon as dusk falls, this arms itself, that LED pulses on and off, A, to deter burglars, and B, to let me know that it's armed. I can also send it an MQTT message to override all that and set it to be armed. So for example, if I go out during the day, I can use the presence detection functions, which we'll discuss in another video, to detect the absence of my mobile phone, and as soon as I leave the premises, it will use the MQTT to arm the alarm and override that light sensor. And I think that's probably all we've got to say on that. Okay, let's look at the code that does that. Starting from the back, first get the boring housekeeping bits out of the way. We've got our global event handler, and you can see there that we are monitoring for the MQTT service, because we have these two things. We want to arm the device when it connects, and we want to unsubscribe from that when it MQTT disconnects, just being tidy and clean. And then obviously we're going to monitor the GPIO, because we need to change the state of the thing when it's armed. So just before we go through the rest of the code, let's look at the web user interface with its nice little bug there with the update URL overflowing the box. Never mind. Here's the big red switch, and if I try and press it, nothing will happen. The reason that nothing will happen is because that condition is not true. And the reason the condition is not true is because it's daylight. So just on the GPIO, that's the built-in one that will flash on and off if you lose your Wi-Fi and all that kind of stuff. 5 is the light sensor, which is kind of reversed. It's off when it's light. So it's a dark sensor, really. It goes on when it's dark. And 12 is the squawky box. Now that's on the floor down behind me, and at some point, just to demo this, I will fire it, but you need to turn your volume down first. In fact, let's get that out of the way. So here's the problem. I can't use the clicky button here. Bish bash bosh, I get an error. Error 8 means I can't do what you want to do at the moment. It's a valid thing to do, but I can't do it now. So what I've got to do is I've got to arm it. So I'm going to use one of the features of the UI, the little control panel. Let's get a list of commands up there. Oh look, arm. So if I say arm/1, there you go. The condition is now true. as you can see from the light, and therefore when I press this, I'm going to put my fingers in my ears. You turn down your volume. Okay, are you ready for this? Yeah, exactly. That's probably busted your speakers. I apologise for that, but you get the idea. So just to stop me accidentally doing that again, I'm going to turn the arming off. There we go, and we're back to normal. So brief introduction to the web user interface, which we'll look at in a lot more detail. But I'll tell you what, no, I'm going to do it again. Turn your speakers down again. Just while I'm here, demonstrate the auto off. There's your arming condition. We're armed and dangerous. Right, get ready, fingers in ears. There you go, and it switches itself off after 1 second. Thank the Lord. So, disarm it again, because I can't wait till lunchtime. Okay, it's disarmed. What I'm going to do now, you can't see this, and I'm not going to move the camera around. You just have to believe me. I'm just going to put my finger over the light sensor. Okay, see what happens? Automatically it arms. I'm going to take it off now. There you go. Let's look at how the magic happens. Here's the code. Right, so we've done that. Oh no, on GPIO, if the pin is the light sensitive pin, then we call arming state change with the new value. Okay, so let's look at the arming state change. What that says is, if we're changing to armed, then we start flashing a pin, the armed pin, that's the one with the little tiny red LED on it. We flash that once every half a second. So that shows physically that it's armed. And in fact, I'm just going to come back to that in a second. I'm sure I don't need to. But anyway, if we're disarming it, we stop that flashing and we turn the thing off. Now that is something that we do just as a convenience, because it kind of makes sense that if the thing's disarmed and it happened to be alarming at the time, you should turn it on. But that's the point. There's the link between changing the arming state and its current status. Let's go and have a look just at the top of the code now. There's our definitions. Wi-Fi, which enables us to control it with the web user interface. MQTT, which allows us to control it with the web, with the MQTT. I'm not going to demo that at the moment. You know, it works. It does exactly the same thing. You send an ARM1, ARM0, whatever. Link master we'll cover in another video. But here is the thing we're talking about today, things and switches. This is a conditional switch, because what it does is it will turn on the D6 switch conditionally on this function here. I return a value of armed. So what the conditional switch says to H4P, anytime it's going to take a command, it calls that function and says, am I ready to do this? And if that function says no, then it won't be allowed to happen. So that's the dead man's handle, the safety foot switch, etc. So armed at the moment is false by default. If I get an event coming off of the GPIO, I change its armed state, and I also publish it to MQTT so that other monitoring devices can see that the alarm is armed. And then this thing here, sync condition, tells the user interface to update its LED to green or red, because I've changed the condition. The web user interface can't know when I do that. It has no control over that, so I have to keep that web user interface in sync. And that's pretty much it, really. The rest of it's all fairly obvious. UPnP server, having that there, same like SSDP, I can now use Alexa to turn that alarm on and off with my voice, should I choose. Remote update allows me to update this on the fly, because it's in a barn 12 foot off the ground normally. I don't want to have to climb up there and press a reset button. I just update it over the air. And here's the light switch. It's a hold. It does it once every 5 seconds. That's pretty much all there is to say about that, apart from the one final thing that I wanted to check. Just bear with me. Yeah, sorry about that. I've just noticed a tiny little bug in there. Just in preparation for the video, I optimized the code and took a lot of stuff out so that it would fit on the screen. And one of the things I took out is the thing that will automatically make the web LED flash in time with the armed LED on the box. So when it's armed, the little LED blinks on and off, and obviously the web UI should be doing the same, but I foolishly took that line out. Life is fun. Anyway, that's things and switches. I hope that's given you an insight into how H4 plugin deals with all of these, how to program it, how simple it is, and how flexible the control functions are. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to making the next one for you.